What if you could join a network of business leaders who share your Christian values, who reject the separation of faith and business, and who have a fierce vision for success? Welcome to Business Makers Network, a network that strives to create community, build intellectual wealth and practical business knowledge, and grow thriving businesses for the kingdom. We're not just another business network. We are a community of unapologetic Christian leaders who understand that success in business blesses our customers, blesses our families and employees, and in the end drives greater profits. All of Christ for all our business efforts as we aim to take the talents God has given us and turn them into 30, 60, and 100-fold. With a combined net worth already exceeding $1 billion in committed memberships, our members are reshaping the business landscape while staying true to our Christian values and taking dominion in the lanes God has paid for us. As a member, you'll gain exclusive access to our Business Makers Network app, discounts to live workshop events, network calls with key influencers, access to like-minded Christian business leaders, a pool of hands-on intellectual wealth and practical business knowledge, mentorship and menteeship programs. We will be rolling those out over the coming year. Read-only access for the tier above you for educational purposes. Invitations to our annual corporate partner dinner. Networking events at the Fight Laugh Feast conference. We offer membership tiers designed to match your business journey. From our exclusive double diamond level for industry titans, to our green membership for promising startups, to our MVP tier that is looking for a community of Christian, like-minded business leaders. There's a place for every serious business leader in our community. Your network is your net worth. Join Business Makers today and become a part of a movement that is changing the face of Christian business leadership. Visit our website now to secure your membership and step into a community where faith, business, and success align.
Imagine a Christian college so desperate for worldly approval that congratulating an alumnus. Imagine a Christian college so desperate for worldly approval that congratulating an alumnus causes an institutional crisis. C.S. Lewis wrote that modern education is designed to create men without chests. In our ghastly simplicity, we castrate and bid the geldings be fruitful. But not at New St. Andrews College. We don't aspire to be the evangelical Harvard, selling our spiritual birthright for a pot of pious platitudes and federal financial aid, or doubling down on DEI until we are DEAD. Tucked away in the chimney of Idaho, surrounded by rolling wheat fields, pine forests, and fully intact bulls, we offer a Christian liberal arts education for outlaws and pirates. We don't feed the victimhood that afflicts young snowflakes, and we refuse to be manipulated by activists wielding their skin color and pronouns, or nice guys wielding their respectability and angst. And when the French are storming the Bastille, we won't tuck tail and run from empathetic mobs. No, we won't be steered by the emotional sabotage of the left because we're anchored to the Word of God. Our aim is to graduate leaders who shape culture under the lordship of Christ. And when the Lord elevates them to positions of power, we'll celebrate the men and women of courage that we've launched into the cultural melee that surrounds us. We'll even congratulate faithful alumni of other institutions. So congratulations, Russ. You too, Pete.
But redemption is real.
And JD, tell Margaret we said hi.
I don't really care, Margaret.
New St. Andrews College. Don't be a steer.
Yes. Hey, y'all. Welcome to Cross Politics on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. For those who are listening, on iTunes or Spotify or whatever, we had this fun little CREC video that would actually tell you what we're doing about the show. For this show, we got Joe Rigney here, Pastor Joe, of course, Chuck Knox on the Waterway. We're going to be talking about the CREC, or really is it kind of Christchurch taking the lead on this? Christchurch.
Yeah.
I know there's some other churches helping for sure, but we're taking the lead on it, and we're going to be planning a church in Washington, D.C. Just east of the National Mall.
Right.
If this
And right behind the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Right behind. Yeah.
Really?
You guys could put a speaker outside the church and preach at the Supreme Court at the same time.
Like there's like that meme where like the guy's standing there and like Jason Momoa is sneaking up behind him.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Like tackle him, and it's like that's us in the Supreme Court. Right?
We need to make that meme. Where's the Pope's brother when we need him? You know?
Oh, you guys are gonna have so many great psalm sings. I'm looking forward to that.
That's cool.
In an age where lies dominate the public square, the need for virtue has never been greater. In a culture captivated by destruction and death, my screen just went blank. Look at that. That's cool. Oh, it's back.
Hey.
The demons.
It was captured by culture
yeah.
and death.
Yeah. The world longs for builders and fighters, those anchored in truth, devoted to liberty, and committed to fruitfulness. New St. Andrews College rises to meet this need, preparing leaders who will faithfully shape culture under the lordship of Jesus Christ. I feel like I should read as fast as I can so it doesn't black out again. New St. Andrews College offers an excellent undergraduate education in the liberal arts, firmly rooted in Christian and Reformed perspective. Its mission is to equip students for lives of faithful service to the triune God and his kingdom, equipping them to use their gifts to cultivate and advance Christian culture. The college doesn't exist to merely hand out degrees, but to establish exceptional leaders who can wield the axe of St. Boniface, destroy idols while harnessing the wisdom of great historical thinkers to build edifices of masterful brilliance that shape the world. The call is clear. We want a generation prepared to stand firm, build wisely, and live faithfully. Applications for fall 2025 are now open at nsa.edu/apply. All right. Oh, he wants me to introduce Joe Rigney right now.
Hey, I'm right
I
here.
just do whatever the prompter says.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Wow, thanks, Joe.
Yeah. And it's gone again. Sorry, Joe. We can't.
Can somebody fix the duct tape underneath the monitor?
It's on again. Here we go. Joe Rigney.
This drives new club members whenever our monitor, we need to help them.
Join the club so we can buy a new monitor. Joe Rigney serves as fellow of theology at New St. Andrews College and associate pastor at Christ Church. He's husband and father of 3, the author of a number of books, including Things of Earth, Leadership and Emotional Sabotage, and most recently and most excitingly, that's a word, totally, The Sin of Empathy, Compassion and Its Counterfeits. Joe, thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Always great to have you.
Yeah.
See you in the office quite a bit, but you know,
y'all
it's
buds.
It's nice to actually hang out.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing actually how much, like how often. I mean, it's a lot of business going on, and so it's like, you know, hey man, hey, see you, and it's and like, you know, we have meetings and stuff, but it's like not hangout time.
It's not hangout time.
So that's when we get to hang out when it comes across politics.
That's right.
We can actually talk.
We can actually talk about
I'm
that.
actually excited. I'm going to read these next 2 ads, and then we're going to jump in and talk about Mission to Babylon.
We should have an ad for Joe over here to read.
Yeah, we should.
Need
I
an
want
ad
to
on
read
my
it, Joe.
monitor.
It would be fun.
Yeah.
In a garden long ago, our first parents fell for the Dark Lord's trick. Probably a bad apple. Oh no, who?
You got to finish this ad.
Kicking off a cosmic war between. Somebody messed with my ad.
No.
The battlefield is for our kids, future warriors in a saga older than your. No, I'm not going to. I'm not going to read
That's
this.
our conference ad.
Go to the Fight Laugh Feast, and you want to sign up for School Wars.
Yes.
School Wars Rebuilding Christendom with your kids.
Joe, we can't afford that.
We will get
There's a reason we don't play that music.
What music?
Exactly.
The future. Just thankfully, you know, you weren't really heavily musically trained, so we think it's going to be okay.
Flat. Always flat.
Always flat.
Seriously, the future belongs to those who train up the next generation.
That's right.
And
if your own church can't keep your kids, your church is done.
So this fall's Fight Laugh Feast conference is going to sell out.
Yes.
And so you want to sign up now, go to fightlaughfeast.com. School Wars, Rebuilding Christendom with our kids. Fathers, you are made to lead your family and lead them in purity. That is your God-given responsibility. That means staying on top of the distractions, the screens, the temptations that can tear apart your home. And it starts with accountability, courageous, proactive accountability. Accountable to You is there to help you and your kids stay pure in the face of everything the world throws at you. Real-time monitoring of all your household devices and instant alerts that highlight any questionable activity. Don't wait until it's too late. Get accountable to you. Be the man who stands firm in the battle for purity. Lead your family with integrity and show them what it means to live a life that honors God. Go to accountable2you.com.
Yeah,
the word accountable, the number 2, the word you.com. There you go. That's all my ads.
I'm curious about what the ad was that Gabe wanted you to read that you didn't read. You just went right past it.
No,
it was that bad.
It was just that bad.
It was exciting. It was a little more, exciting ad. That's all.
So, DC.
Dun, 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 dun.
We can't afford that one either.
Mission to Babylon.
Mission to Babylon.
As we've been affectionately referring to it in the office.
Yeah.
DC's Babylon, huh?
Why a mission?
Pick your metaphor. It's either Babylon and we're going to bring its glory into the New Jerusalem,
Mm-hmm.
or it's Jerusalem. We're going to go rebuild its walls. You can choose.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Go either way.
Why?
I want to rebuild.
Why a mission? Why a church in Washington, D.C.? Why now? And why Idaho? Why is a church in Idaho planting a church in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, because we're trying to read the story that we're in.
Okay.
So this is what we always try to do. We always want to read the story we're in. And so at a very practical base level, we have members of our churches who are now in DC, at least for a time, serving in a variety of capacities. And they're there, and they and their families are like, we can't really find a church that has that worships the way that we do, right? That has the covenant renewal worship, psalm singing, that sort of thing. That's reformed, Paedo Baptist, Paedo Communion, that's a thing for a number of them, and that has a kind of a build and fight vision. So there's evangelical churches, and we hope to get to know some of those folks in DC. There's not actually a lot of them. It is a little bit of a wasteland, but there are some in DC proper and then in the surrounding area. But so that's one reason, is that we have people there.
We have people there, and we're trying to take care of them.
And we want to shepherd them and care for them.
Yeah.
That's one. The second is the CREC for years has said, man, we should have a church in DC. Our folks go there for a variety of reasons. We have, Nick Solheim, I know he's been on here working with This American Moment. He's a CREC guy, lives out of DC, but commutes in. And he's bringing people there, trying to, staff the Trump administration. And so there's that was like, hey, this is coming. And so then with the election, all of a sudden, hey, there's going to be evangelicals everywhere, including some of our people. You've got guys like Pete Hegseth, who's a CREC guy. There's a few other guys serving in the administration who are in the same boat. So it's like basically there's people who are aligned in terms of theological and cultural vision, who are there without a church to anchor. And part of our fundamental conviction is it worships the heartbeat. Like it's the center. The temple's at the heart of the city. The temple is, the water flows out from the temple. It flows out from the worship. It pumps blood to the body. And so if you can't do the culture building stuff, you can't do the business stuff, you can't do the education stuff, you can't do that if you don't have the heartbeat. You just got a corpse. And so if we want to have something substantive there, that then we need to have churches. And so we thought we'd do it. And then the kind of the catalyst was a realization. I was having a conversation with one of our elders who has folks there who would love this. And all of a sudden we just both together realized, we have a lot of ministers here in Moscow. Yeah. And it was just all, it's kind of like you start counting. How many ministers, given the number of services we have, given the now it's multiple churches. And it's multiple churches with multiple ministers.
Yes.
Right.
And so you realize, so, and I travel and speak places, you travel and speak places, Doug goes, Jared goes. And then we've got the other guys. And so it was all of a sudden like, man, I started counting and realized, just with our guys, if our guys would do once or twice a year, we'd cover half the year.
Oh my goodness.
Just with Moscow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and I could think
flying them out there for the weekend.
Flying them out there for the weekend to lead the service. Yeah. And then I thought, and with our friends, with some of the other CREC folks in that area on the East Coast, there's CREC churches in Annapolis and in Pennsylvania and Virginia and places. You had them in, and then you had some of our other friends like Yuri Brito and Chris Wiley and guys like that.
Yeah.
Almost like that's 52. Yeah. We get 52 weeks out of that.
Yeah.
So
pretty easily.
So why? Because the hang up for a CREC church in DC has been, hey, everybody goes, this would be great. We need to do this.
But there's no pastor.
Who wants to do it?
Yeah.
Right.
And there's an element of, we planted our church kind of, out of Bethlehem back in 2016. And City's Church in Minnesota. Yeah. And it's like, there's a particular kind of entrepreneurial pastoral skill set that goes along with church planting. You have to have a little bit of that to kind of go in from scratch. And so it's a narrower skill set than just pastoral ministry in general.
Right.
And so I was like waiting for that guy. If we just wait around for that guy, we may be waiting for a while. But it's a different thing to say, hey, we ran a flag up in DC, go fight, win, build and fight,
right.
Covenantal, Reformed, whatever.
Yeah.
We ran the flag up and a bunch of people came to it. And now there's 150 people worshiping week by week. And now we can look around and go, hey, who wants to be these people's pastor? And that's there's a wider group to draw from who might be interested in being the pastor of that church.
But if they see all that 150 people, they're like, no.
They might. Well,
those guys
we have talked about that as we look, as we look about when we are praying actively, like Lord, raise up the guy.
Yes.
Raise up the minister who's going to take this on as his calling. And we do think it needs to be someone who's probably a little older, mature, been in ministry a while, maybe has grown kids, as opposed to a younger guy, maybe fresh out of seminary. This is not the place for that. And we've jokingly said that he needs to have a little bit of Jonah in him.
Right.
I'm going to Nineveh.
Yeah, right. Like, hey, we need you to go to Babylon. We need you to go to Nineveh.
Meaning he doesesn't want to do
it. Meaning he's like, I think I'm going to go to Tarshish.
I know you'll save him, Lord.
I know. You want a little bit of that reluctance. You don't want someone who's like, oh, let me get close to the power. Because the real aim is we want to establish another outpost of covenant renewal worship.
It really does need to be a Jonah type character, though, because obviously, Jonah sinned and Jonah took it too far.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have somebody who's got a little bit of attitude.
Like this guy's on the edge of sin.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right up to the edge.
That's kind of a Calvin, though, isn't it? Like he doesn't want to do it.
Right.
He gets forced into it because somebody's going to pray against him. He's like, oh, I hate your prayers. God always answers them,
Right. So that's the idea. And so the time seemed right with the new administration, the kind of cultural momentum. And I think another thing, some people have said, oh, you guys are just wanting to, go be close to the power or whatever. And I'm sitting there and part of me wants to go, kind of. Like not because it's not power hungry, but it's like the alternative is Paula White.
That's right. No, that's exactly
what
right.
I mean? Like you can't, here's what you can't do. You can't say, oh, it's so terrible that Trump listens to Paula White. And then if a church, like a conservative, reformed, evangelical, Bible-believing church is like, we want to go be in D.C. and we kind of hope we get a White House invite.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can't go, oh, you guys are trying to be close to power. I want to just go like, yeah, man, because otherwise it's her.
Right.
And we don't want it to be her. We would like them to say, we want, those folks to be going, hey, let's go to.
There's also a difference between like wanting the power and wanting to influence the power.
Correct.
Wanting to bring the gospel to the power.
Right.
Wanting,
Yeah.
I don't think I've never seen any lust for power among our pastors and our leadership here. And honestly, we all know the labor that it's going to take to plant in DC, and that's exhausting just thinking about it.
So I got appointed when we did this, talked about it.
You weren't at the meeting and they voted on you.
I was there and I said, oh, sure. How hard, it's, I'm just coordinating, and it's like, it is a lot of work. And I've had a lot of help. So one thing is there is a CRAC church in Annapolis, which is kind of like a suburb of DC.
Yeah.
And they've got, they've been growing, they're, thriving congregation there. And so some of the folks who go to that church live in Northern Virginia. And so they're driving past DC to get to church, like in 45 minutes to an hour. And so we say, hey, we're going to do this. And they go, that cuts my commute in half,
right?
For church. And so they're all excited. And so there's a core group of folks on the ground there who are all in and working and coordinating and doing logistics, and we'll be involved. And so that's exciting to have that. And they've been a great blessing for this effort, because we are trying to do a really unusual airborne ministers thing.
And this is like admittedly not how you usually plant a church.
That's what I was going to ask.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, we're not claiming like this is some new, like you should try
we're
this.
We're going to market it. Yeah. We're going to write it. We're going to write books and market.
Well, that comes next.
Airborne.
No,
new strategy.
We are not anticipating that at all.
Correct.
And we are assuming that this is an odd congruence of factors. And we're saying, okay, we're, as you said, reading the story and saying, it looks to us like God wants us to do this. Right. Even though this is not ordinarily how you plant a church.
Exactly. And so we've raised some money. We've had people who are invested and really want to see this happen. So we've raised kind of an initial group. We still
seed money.
Seed money, basically. Yeah. And we've kind of given ourselves kind of, an 18-month sort of runway to see, does a congregation form in this way? Lord, will you bless it? Yeah. We're going to sow these seeds this way. Will you bless it? And if he does, then it's, Lord, bring the guy.
Right. And ChristKirkDC.com is the website. So if you're listening or watching.
Or if you're feeling a little spicy, you can type in Christ Kirk Babylon.com and just see what happens.
Is that there too? Okay. So,
all right.
If I remember correctly, a lot of the times that I think CRC churches try and plan in inner cities, there's always a problem. It's a little difficult to try and get people to there. But in this case, you have people who are already there that are trying to create a church for
inner cities.
Yeah, like yeah. So inner cities, I don't think there's a lot of CRC churches inside of the metropolitan.
I don't know how
areas.
much we've tried.
Okay.
But we don't have
right. They're just not. When I look for them, they're not there.
And it's usually like part of it is like hostility to families. It's hard to have a large family, which CREC culture tends to have.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things we've talked about with the folks in DC is like most of if you have families, they're going to be living in suburbs of Northern Virginia
and around,
and they commute in for work. And they might, and then because of that, they could communicate for Sunday worship. But then there's also this group that's kind of transient, the people who come to DC for 2 or 3 years because they're in administration or they're working for a think tank or whatever. And that's part of the kind of target demographic that we're thinking of is the people who are there temporarily. And so we sort of, when I've talked to the guys there on the ground, and they've talked about just kind of like the churn in that region. They said you should expect that, if you can have 40 to 50% of the congregation that's stable, there over 5-10 years.
Wow.
That would be a good number.
Yeah.
And then the other 40-50% is just
every 3 years,
every
administration,
every couple of years, they're cycling in and out. He said that. So in some ways, it's not unlike actually like a college.
Yeah.
Churches that operate in college towns.
Yeah.
Where you do have some core families who are there long term, but like the church is huge during the school year, and it's like 25 people in the summers because all the college kids go home.
So if you're preaching in a place like DC, does it change? It changes how you do what you're preaching on. I'm guessing a lot.
Well,
there's still theft there, just like there is here.
So we're leaning. So part of the way we're leaning against this, like what we decided kind of out of the gate was, you could go and you could try to be like hey, let's start talking about all the political issues of the day and like apply the Bible to that, which I think is what we should do.
Right.
But what we want to start with was let's just preach through a book of the Bible and establish like we're Bible people. And so we picked Ephesians because we were like, we can cover big
marriage.
You can cover big theology, all the big theological doctrinal stuff,
raising
all
kids,
the practical marriage, family kind of stuff, the church stuff. We're going to cover all, you can cover all of that. Just preach through Ephesians. And so so each minister is going to be assigned that passage for the week. And so it's going to be, the series will be common and the ministers will be different.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Gabe.
Why'd you laugh when he said Ephesians?
Because you know how God does this. Well, as you're preaching through Ephesians, it's going to be directly on something political that's happening.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like you can't get away. You're not going to get away.
Joe broke it out here in May.
Yeah.
And then it'll line up in October.
Exactly.
And
I'm in for it.
Okay, guys, I did not plan this.
Yeah.
This is
it's just going to hit like that.
Right.
That's
well, and you do get to hit, so let the thief no longer steal.
Right.
Congress, you know what I mean? Like congressman.
There's chicken stealers in Moscow, but in Congress.
That's right. So you got that. You got the sodomy's bad, everybody.
Right.
You got the sexual immorality stuff. So you family formation, love your wife, get married. Marriage is good. Have kids.
Kids honor
but I think one of the other things of why we did this is a couple of, I don't know, last year sometime, I think Merkel's went out there for something. He was doing something for NSA. And Becca went and spoke to like a group of like young, I don't know if it was young Republicans or young conservatives or a group of women on kind of even exile. And basically just kind of, and she's going in thinking like, these are like, the idea would be, these are probably like conservative girl boss types who, they're in DC, they're single women in DC kind of doing the hard charging thing. Yeah. But she's like, I'm going to go do even exile and be like motherhood and domestic and homemaking. And so she just does her normal thing. And like it's at a conference, so there's multiple talks. Like she's the one who got the standing O. Like all these ladies stood up and were just like, yes. Yeah. And so it was like, oh, maybe they're actually like, you might not think that would play there,
right?
But they're really, among this crowd, at least, there was a hunger for like, we want that. And so to be a church that says, hey, this is what core to who we are is, centrality to the family, things like that.
It lines up too with what we've seen since COVID. I've said a number of times, God significantly lowered the bar to being effective.
Yeah, right.
I don't mean that in like lowering the bar in terms of like excellence or moral virtue or anything like that. I just mean like in order to win in COVID.
Don't require a mask.
Just
in
be
your church.
open,
Yeah.
preach the gospel,
Yeah.
celebrate communion, no masks, sing out loud.
Don't stand 6 feet apart.
You know, but like, you know, it's like that was the bar,
Right.
and you won. Like your
Yeah.
church, you know, blew up.
Right.
And I wonder if, you know, the more decadence
Yep.
a place has. I mean, obviously, this is ultimately all up to the Spirit of God moving. But I wonder if it works that way, where
Yeah.
you walk in and you say, okay, so men were made to lead, and, you know, lead their families, lead in the church, lead in the public square. Women are made to be mothers and homemakers and assist their husbands in their callings. And everybody says, oh, that sounds wonderful.
That sounds wonderful.
I'm in. Sign me up.
Like that's such good news. Where'd you get that?
Yeah, right.
And you're like,
Ephesians
it's right.
chapter 5. Right?
It's just right
It's gonna
there.
be there.
I mean, I wonder if that's,
Yeah.
if you're right, that has a particular potency.
Well, and it's because some of it I think is that cohort, that group that went there because they look at the cultural and political decay and they want to do something about it. And right now there may be a sense of tension where, like, in order to fight this, you know, Leviathan dragon, I have to kind of put on hold normal, because we don't live in normal times.
Yeah.
And if you kind of come and say, like, hey, we want to help you do normal, like, it's actually the way that we're going to kill this dragon
Yeah. Yep.
is through just like normal,
Right.
like just be like a human being with a family.
Eat dinner with your family.
Eat dinner with your family
Right.
every night.
Right.
And you can kind of like relieve some of that and be like, yes, go to work. Yes, labor, pass the bills, support the senator, do whatever you got to do. Like, yes, that's all fine. But like mainly worship God, you know, love your family, have dinner, play with the kids. Like that's world changing, and think generationally. And I think that will be a kind of like, oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's God's plan. That's how it's going to happen.
Right.
You know, you were talking earlier and we didn't go into it, but, you know, part of the reason you said we're planting the church is because we know the story that we're in.
Mhm.
But would you walk through, like, what is how are you looking at the story? What is the story exactly?
Yeah. So some of
Are you talking about like this story or story reading in general?
This
Yeah,
story.
this story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So part of it is like in this, like the last few years, like whatever the Lord has done in kind of like elevating, like we got shoved to the front and a mic got stuck in our face.
Mhm.
Like literally mine did, but like,
Yeah.
but like, Moscow, Christian nationalism, COVID, like all of these things have kind of like
Doug on Tucker,
Doug
going
on
Charlie,
Tucker,
something
going
like
on,
that.
So
all
all of
that
a
stuff,
sudden, here's this little town in Idaho that's had, you know, been known in evangelical circles, and then all of a sudden God said, we're just going to turn up, you know, we're going to give you some bigger speakers,
Yeah.
you know, some newer speakers,
Yeah.
and we're going to like turn it up,
Yeah.
and here's speak clearly into the mic. And so that's part of reading the story is like, okay, God, this is a stewardship. It's kind of like there was a little bit of like, hey, if not
God's
us,
given us more. That means we need to do more.
exactly. If not us, like, because, you know, when you say, like, again, the CREC has said it for a while, like, hey, we'd love to have a church in DC, but you kind of look around and go like, well, who's going to do it? And all of a sudden it's like, well, of the churches in the CREC that could pull something like this off in this unusual way, it's like, we're probably it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right.
Like there could be, like Annapolis, if they'd have had a minister, might have been able to think about, hey, how do we do that? But it would have been a different ask for a church of a couple hundred people than for for a well-established with you know, these kinds of media platform apparatuses and stuff like that, to be able to say, hey, we want to rally people to this flag.
Well, and also 10 pastors basically on deck.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, that's the story. It's like, what cards has God dealt to us, and how has the game been going? And is it time to go ahead and say, hey, you know what? I think we might just want to go all in a little bit. Like, let's put a little bit more chips in the table, take a little bit of a risk, and see if God does it. And if he doesn't, then it's like, okay, well, you know, we took our shot.
Yeah.
But we kind of think you will.
You know,
And if this was the time and the moment to kind of plant the flag, establish the beachhead in that town, so that in 10, 15 years, all of a sudden there's, you know, long term, there's this isn't just I hope we can do as much good in the next 4 years.
Right.
You know, it's like, no, then this is the momentum that helps you get established so that you're there for generations.
Man, I hope, this is a weird thought, but I hope that this kind of move, God blesses it, and it makes other solid Reformed Christian denominations jealous, and they all do the same thing.
And just start taking some
and
risks.
everybody's like, you know what? We're going to Washington
We're planning in Washington.
Yeah. We're going to plant a church there too, because Baptists, they need to make sure they're not baptizing their babies.
That's right.
And we're going to help them not do that.
And there's a big Reformation revival in DC.
Because but when you think about it, all of a sudden, all these Christian beachheads are there, and there's covenanted relationships.
Right.
There's prayer meetings everywhere, and then it's like, okay, Texas, we're coming for you. We want that 90-foot idol down.
Yeah.
You know, you start thinking about that. So I hope it catches on. It's interesting.
Provoking people to jealousy.
Absolutely.
By just
Absolutely.
pursuing Christ. And
Absolutely.
That's it. We need 3 more Baptist churches there.
That's the kind of thing you want to see.
That's good.
So here's the question: will Democrats be welcome in the church?
Of course.
Huh? I'm not going.
They can come.
Can they join?
They can
Can
come.
they join the church?
They can come, and then I mean, will they stay?
Yeah.
If you actually preach the Bible,
Yeah.
that's the question.
Huh?
You know, I remember
They won't become. I don't think they can be comfortable.
I think, frankly, a lot of Republicans are going to be in the same position.
Will Republicans be
Right,
welcome?
no.
I mean, come on, please. I mean, it's like,
No, I would say like part of because like here's another reason. Like so, you know, we're all grateful for a bunch of the stuff that the Trump administration has done, some of the balls that they've carried down the field,
sure.
and then there's a bunch that they've just absolutely fumbled and are totally blowing. And it's like, okay, so like part of it is I know, like at a practical level, there's evangelicals in the Trump administration.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the environment they're in is one that wants to say, hey, we're going to draw the line at transgender, and we're not going to trans the kids, and the boss is all in on that. And so here we go. And they're like, yeah, look, we're doing it. But like all the sodomites are still there and just totally, and we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I need a guy there. I need a minister there who's going to say, oh, but we are like, Obergefell's next. We're coming for that.
Yeah.
So that you calibrate the Christians in DC by the word of God and not by whatever the present administration can tolerate.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
Right.
Like,
That's
so to go and go like, hey, we're going to come for feminism. We're going to go after sodomy.
Right.
Like those are sins in that town.
Yeah.
Those are sins that are acceptable among both parties in that town.
That's right.
And it's like, we want to plant that flag and say the Bible has something to say about this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the places where it might get uncomfortable. I don't know if Democrats will even show up, maybe to protest.
Yeah. Right.
But I think that there might be some Republicans who are going to get uncomfortable and go, oh, this is going to be awkward in the office. If I actually act on what the pastor just said.
Yeah. Or it gets out that I attended a service.
Exactly.
I was seen there.
That's right.
And CNN does something on me being at that Christian nationalist church.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So I remember, was it 2021 or 2020? We had Doug on the show, and we asked something. The question was something along the lines of, Doug, what's your biggest concern in this difficulty from COVID to the economy? And he said, my biggest concern was people Christians sitting on their rears, Christians not being proactive, not, kind of playing off the parable of the talents. God gives you 2 talents. He wants to see a return on that. 5 talents. He wants to see 10, that kind of thing. And a little bit, this to me kind of feels like that a little bit for Christ Church to be doing this in DC. Like, and one thing that's kind of interesting about the parable of the talents, it's kind of it's economically agnostic, meaning that whether the economy is good or bad, God wants you to see a return on what you're doing. And that seems like the economy's not very good right now. We don't have a pastor in DC right now. There's a bunch of things kind of against us, but it feels like a little bit like, okay, we got 2 talents though.
Yeah. So and we might as well take our shot.
We're going to do it. Yeah.
And given what the master says to the guy who buried his talent, it seems absolutely clear that it would have been better for him to have tried and lost
his talent. That's
right.
right. That's right.
He would have been praised. He would have been praised for well done, good and faithful servant.
That's right.
For having risked it and lost it.
Yeah. You owe me with interest, but
but way better than just burying it, because remember the real condemnation is the servant really kind of turns bitter at the end and says, I know you were a harsh master.
Right.
And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
He gave you a talent.
Right.
And you're gonna turn and blame him.
Yeah.
Like, I knew you were harsh, so I didn't do anything with it. And so everything comes down to, how do you view God?
Right.
How do you view the master? Is he the kind of master who loves faithful risk taking?
That's right. That's right.
Or do you see him as harsh and just grasping?
Yeah.
And then the talent he gave you is just a big burden. Right. And he's just kind of, waiting to see if you fail.
Right.
Well, and if you aren't trusting God, you view it as a burden, and you also view it as something like, man, I don't really want this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you see him as God is hungry for us to use his resources for his kingdom and risk it, then you're willing to risk it.
Yeah. Well, this is, so plug here for Greyfriars Hall, because this is another element of like the kind of, hey, let's make the most of what we have. We've got 10 guys come in. So we had Greyfriars Hall. It's the ministerial training at Christ Church. You did Greyfriars.
Yeah.
Right?
I did too, but we don't recognize that.
Yeah. I didn't see your name on the list.
I didn't finish it. I got to my philosophy of ministry paper and then my 6 papers, and I started having kids. And
yeah. So we're, the NSA's absorbed it, and it's now a partnership with NSA and the churches.
And it's MDiv now.
And it's MDiv. It's a full MDiv.
I just found that out yesterday. I probably knew, but I don't
know where he's been. We've been advertising it and everything. And he was like, in the middle of me talking about it, he's like, it's an MDiv?
I was like, it's legit now?
It's legit now. Fully accredited, the whole deal, 3 years of ministerial training. And part of the reason is because fields are white for the harvest. We hear, you guys hear, I know, like from your audience, where they're like, man, we would love to have a CREC church. Do
you know a pastor?
You know a pastor? Like, hey, we've got a core group of people who listen to, Canon Plus subscribers, listen across Politic, read the books, love the stuff. But like the closest CREC church is 3 hours away.
Yeah.
And they feel that, and they're like, but if we had a minister, we would do it. And so Greyfriars is like, hey, let's, rather than doing it in 1s and 2s or 3s and 4s like it's been, we're now at a place where like we could do like, hey, we can have 10, 12 guys a year, and then all of a sudden you get next year it'll be 24, right?
Yeah, right.
And then it'll be 36 at one time, like here in my, so it's 24 to 36 guys, and then every year churn out 8 to 10 graduates, and wanting to launch them to various places around the country, so that when that person says, hey, we have a core group of people who want, a fight, laugh, feast church, a build and fight church. We want that covenant renewal, psalm singing. We want what you guys have. We can go, hey, we got a guy.
Right.
And he's ready to go. And so like we've tried to build this program so that these guys will come. They're doing Hebrew right now, and then they're going to be doing their courses in the fall. And
I love that. They've already started. Like we said, in order to, we're going to get going on Hebrew right away. So they're into it. And I mean, praise God, like we fully funded their scholarships. Like this was this was
all 10 of them?
All 10 of them. So like the big deal, because like the funding mechanism was kind of the like, okay, part of, before it was free to the student, but it was like 2 or 3, and it was a ministry of the church, basically. Right. Now we're like, hey, this is
our church would handle the cost of administering those students.
Now we're moving into NSA, and so like, man, it's like $20K a year in terms of cost to the school to educate that guy. Yeah. And when we proposed this, I was like, but this was I learned this at Bethlehem. This is a similar model, and I was like, I think we should raise 3/4 of that. I think we should relieve that burden from the student. We want them we want them to devote themselves to study the word of the Lord and to do it and to teach it. We want their like minds on like, do the Bible, provide for your family.
And not end with a bunch of debt.
And so I was like, we need to raise 15 of this 20K. Yeah. And so that's the Ezra Scholarship. Because Ezra set his heart to study the law of the Lord and to do it and teach it in Israel. So we're going to get these guys to set their heart to do that.
So we actually have a now official Ezra scholarship.
So we have official Ezra scholarship. And over the last, I don't know, since October when we went public, we've raised $150K for the 10 guys.
Wow.
And which is amazing. And like it's churches, it's individuals. I just got a church just recently said, we're going to fund a full scholarship. And I was like,
wow.
And then, Christ Church is bearing some of that. King's Cross is bearing some of that cost, but like other churches around the country, and then individuals. And so it's like, this is amazing that the Lord's blessing this. And then now it's like, now I got to turn around and like, all right, now I got to raise next year. I got to raise 300K because I got to raise 150 for the guys that are here. And then the next set of guys too. Right. So if you're out there and you're like, hey, I want that, like greyfriarshall.com, you can go contribute, because this is
a Ezra scholarship link on Greyfriars.
Just you go to give, contribute to the Ezra scholarship there. But it is kind of like the mechanism that we want to see, like, how are we going to multiply this theological vision in churches, whether DC, we're going to do one in Hillsdale. Right now we got a place, so we got, that's in the works to do a church in Hillsdale.
Planning Church at Hillsdale.
Church Hillsdale. Yeah. And then we've got these other places. I have cities right now. You guys have cities that are like, we need a minister. And I'm like, we want to meet this.
Yeah.
No, it's
there's also something, as you're talking, I was just thinking about, you were bringing and earlier, Gabe, and just sort of there's the talent principle, there's the risk principle, there's the take the resources you've been given, and so on. And another economic principle I was thinking of is God made the world such that really what drives human thriving, human flourishing economically, and really in many respects in a number of different ways, is actually supply comes first, and then the demand.
Yeah, right.
Frequently, we think of it the other way around. And of course, they feed each other as it goes along and creates these cycles. But God created a world that was sheer gift.
Yeah.
George Gilder makes this point beautifully and says, in the beginning was the word. Like the first thing was the plan, the idea, the gift. God made a world for which there was no demand.
Right. No needs.
Nobody was knocking on God's door.
All opportunity.
There was no, it was all pure gift. Pure opportunity. Pure opportunity, and then of course he created a world in which there was a hungry man in it, who then starts, and God says, here, I made you food. There and so on. But there's a principle there in which all entrepreneurial efforts begin with that idea, that plan, a word, and it's a gift. And in doing that, you're taking a risk. You believe this is something that people need, and obviously, in lots of entrepreneurial work is sort of gradations on what's already been made. Someone takes something and then improves it, which is needed, and that's good.
Dominion, yeah.
But the real entrepreneurs are the ones that Peter Thiel says go from 0 to 1. They go from nothing to something. Yeah. They imitate God the Maker in that way, in which they come up with something that nobody knew they needed.
Yeah.
Apple comes up with the iPhone.
Yeah.
Like
I knew I needed that though.
He was banging on Steve's door.
But I was tired of the flip phone.
But I think but part of the broader picture here is that generally speaking, and the gospel's the same way. Sinners don't know they need the gospel.
Right.
But God, in his grace, provides the gospel before we even know we need it.
Right.
And it's the supply of that gospel that actually creates the hunger and the demand.
Right.
Oh my goodness, your eyes open. I need you, Lord. And so I think the idea here, I mean, obviously we know of demand and we know there's the demand. There's these fields white for harvest, as Jesus says. And at the same time, in a place like DC and other places where we send people, we're going to start worshiping here. What we're doing in a sense as entrepreneurs, with the gospel, we're saying we're going to go provide a fountain in the wilderness. Yeah. We believe there's a wilderness here, and we're going to dig a well in faith, like Abraham in Canaan. And we believe
God's going to provide,
and God's going to provide the water. And we believe it's going to be the kind of water, the kind of oasis that's going to draw a bunch of people, maybe a lot of people who didn't even know they needed it. Maybe people who didn't realize how parched and how thirsty they were.
For sure.
So I'm just curious, since we got you here, what's kind of taking your mind politically? Where's your head at politically?
Oh man. What am I on?
He's really worked up about the Afrikaners right now.
Well, I'm curious about that.
I think it's a fascinating thing. I think that's an amazing,
it's because you're woke.
It is. I think it's an amazing, so I have some of the Twitter accounts I follow somehow will sometimes retweet what's going on in South Africa. I've seen like little bits and pieces of some of the ugly.
Yeah.
And so then for them to talk about, hey, we're going to accept refugees, and then for them to actually do it. And then you get these like families with all their stuff waving American flags. And
we can't even get some of our people to wave an American flag.
We can't. And they're like, we're here and whatever. And then, so that's like one thing. And if that was all it was, I would have been like, oh, cool. But then to see like the reaction from the left to it and be like, oh my goodness.
Right.
So like when the Episcopal Church is like, they've billions of dollars to do refugee resettlement and like partnering NGOs with the government and all this thing. And it's like, and we've been thinking, I'm just sitting there going like, we've been thinking like, how do we shut them off? How do we stop that? How do we get them out of that like progressive woke, like invasion of the country? And it's like, all it took was admitting 59 Afrikaners, and they're like, we out. I'm like, that's literally all it took.
Yeah, no,
that's that's the sort of thing that if you would have said like 6 months ago, I would have laughed at as like a funny ha-ha caricature. A Babylon Bee, like Episcopal Church, decides to pull their funding and their participation because they wanted to admit Elon's family or something like that. I would have been like, that's funny. But it's like, no, they did it. Like they actually did it. And so I think it's an interesting, and I think the other thing is that what it's provoked related to the, one of the key issues of our time is this question of like tribe and ethnicity. Like, what is it? What is it even? And how do we think through it as Christians and avoid the stupid on the left and the evil on the left and the stupid on the right and the evil on the right.
Yeah.
Like, because there are different versions of this, but like, how do we actually be biblical about this? And this is like a really interesting instance to kind of reveal
both sides,
those kinds of things. Right.
In what way?
So I think, so I saw somebody say like, this is a great opportunity for people to show their ideological consistency, by which he meant, it was Shinvi. Shinvi was talking about it, and it was like, this is going to reveal your consistency. And what he meant is, if the left really loves refugees,
right,
then they'll celebrate this.
Right.
And if the right really opposes immigration and, you know, the use of refugees, they'll oppose it. Yeah. And that would be ideological consistency on both sides. And so he's sort of standing in the middle saying this isn't consistent. And I go, no. I think for the folks on the right to recognize like, hey, okay, is this actually a refugee situation? Where is there real persecution, racial persecution happening in South Africa? Like that, like factually. Yeah. And then second, like as a principle of immigration, like similarity of enabling assimilation through similarity is like a factor on the table. Yeah. And it's like, these people all speak English. Most of them are Christians. So here's a Christian country and admitting Christian, like the skin color is sort of like not the issue. What the skin color does is it exposes the left's game here, right? Which is like any refugee is welcome except for white Christians.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, that's what we thought, but thanks for saying it out loud.
Right.
Right. But it's like, but it's so I just think that in that sense, you can be ideologically consistent and say, yeah, I want low levels of immigration. I want no illegal immigration. I want us to close this border off. I want people to go home. And having done that, for us to say like, okay, where are there actual real hardships that we could actually relieve? Yeah. And that would be true whether it's white Afrikaners or Palestinian Christians for that matter, or, you know, like other, you know, folks in Zimbabwe, like blacks in Zimbabwe who like are persecuted, whatever it is. Like, I'm like, yeah, like we can assimilate small numbers of those as a way of stewarding what God's given to us. And it's not ideologically inconsistent at all for us to oppose the left's immigration open borders thing and then to celebrate this. So I just think like that, like that's what it's revealing.
That's helpful.
I said this yesterday. That was actually stated. I think I feel exactly the way that you just stated that. 100%. That's my position, I believe. One of the things though, I've had to check myself on is I want the borders shut.
Right.
Because we can inoculate our own. And so how are we going to bring anybody else in and make them Americans if we don't even have an identity for 100%. Ourselves? So I don't want anybody coming in. I was talking about this yesterday. And then when I got home and I was thinking about this, I was like, I was going through the verses of Israel when they didn't have a home and they needed to go through a place either for protection, and they didn't open their gates for whatever reason. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be in that position either. Like, I God judged other nations really harshly when people were in need. And
especially his people.
Especially his people. Right. Exactly. And so I had to go back and had to like, let me think about, we have to do some serious examination of who these people are. Right. Like, so I think you actually said exactly how I probably would need to be thinking about this, because there is a reason to let people in who are close to you, who do need protection, and we want to be that kind of nation.
And I think it exposes, like, as a part of the debates about like Christian nationalism, do I want an immigration policy that privileges Christians? And it's like, yeah. Like, I want to do good to all, especially the household of faith. So like that, whatever the especially means there is like, I think that they're like, this is layered loves, ordered loves, whatever you want to say, where you go like, like as a Christian nation, if our brethren across the world need assistance in some ways, like I think we should go like, And if you say, so you're saying we shouldn't help any Muslims or Hindus? I'm like, no. I'm saying priorities. Like, and I think that's actually like, this is a conversation that makes Christians uncomfortable because they've imbibed this kind of like flattened secularism, which says like, no, you have to treat everyone equally. And if you love your kids more than other kids, and if you love your nation more than other nations, like this is contrary to the way of Jesus. And I want to go, no, this is actually, so this is a good revealer of that principle, that it's like, no, I think it's perfectly consistent with my Christian faith to say, I want to, like, in other words, if these were, if it was, say Muslims, in the same boat, let's say they were white skinned or something like that, and it was like the same thing, I'd be like, I feel differently about this, because the religion matters. Like it actually, is a factor, and for a nation to consider that, in its immigration policies, I think is just wise.
Right.
It's one of the main factors, because everything you're doing is based out of your religion.
Right.
Your morality how you decide to eat. All of this stuff is based out of your religion. I mean, it's funny. We were talking to Samuel Davison yesterday, and the whole war that between Pakistan and India, we're talking about religious stuff.
Oh yeah.
We're not talking about, the color of these people's skin. We're talking about their religion.
Yeah.
Whose religion is better? Which one deserves superiority? Which God is greater? That's what we're actually talking about. So I totally agree with you on that.
Well, and this is where, like, with the American thing, like, part of your immigration policy should be, okay, in 2 generations, how likely is it if these folks from South Africa come here and they stay and they decide we've left our homeland,
right?
But we're here, we're going to go all, and in 2 generations, will their kids be Americans? And I think, yeah, probably. Like, I think that they would be able to do it.
Right.
And that's different than other ethnic groups, which are like, no, we're actually bringing our nation here, and we're planting an outpost because we're taking you over.
No,
like
our nation, our Somalis or Muslims or whatever.
Well, you were in Minneapolis. That's what happened in Minneapolis.
Yes. Right. There's like, it's little Somalia.
Yes,
and
right.
it's like, it's like, well, we've always had Chinatowns, and it's like, yeah, we have, but that was also like far less. And it was not, and we had it was
Americanized Chinatown.
And yeah, exactly. Right. And it was like, we knew what we were.
Yes.
We knew,
exactly.
Right.
We knew,
and they knew who we were.
They knew what we were.
Yes.
And they knew that, like, in order to, like, come in, there was things that they had to actually abandon some things. So I can't remember who I was talking to, somebody who had Polish in their background. And they basically talked about how when their grandparents came over, as soon as they came to America, like, they never spoke Polish again in the house.
Yeah,
I've heard that kind of story.
Where they were like, hey, well, no, we left it, and we can still cook that food or whatever,
right.
But it's like, but we're Americans now, and like, we're rooting for the Bears. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's
the Cowboys.
Speaking of the Pope, I don't know, like, now that's a weird thing to say. Like,
it's funny. I have a little bit of a problem. I got a friend who's Italian, and his family came over here during the whole migration, and his grandfather wanted to go back and fight with Italy during the war, and his mom
on the side of Italy.
On the side of Italy, fight on the side of Italy. And his mom was like, no, you don't understand. We're Americans now.
Yeah,
we're fighting with them, right? And so in the Second World War, now he's fighting with America, right? And it's like, that's the kind of thing, whatever that was, that happened, that made them in a short amount of time say, no, we're Americans. We don't have that anymore. Right. And that's the kind of thing that bothers me, is like, we don't have an identity anymore.
It's a confidence. Like, it really, like, there is an element of, like, there is an element of, like, you have to have a sense of yourself as a people that's valuable, and that and people worry, like, oh, that's going to be idolatrous. And I was like, it could be, like, all of God's good gifts. Like, it could actually turn gnarly, and you could do like, my country, right or wrong, and I don't care. Right. But I actually saw, I don't remember a clip somebody was talking about, I don't remember who the guy was. It was a British guy who said, I would love my country even if it was communist.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, what? And he's like, but the point that was being made was,
not that he loves communism.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like, I love my country despite this evil communism, and I want to get rid of it because I love my country.
That's right.
And so it's like, it's animated. So you don't go like, I guess my country's gone now, and I guess it's over.
But you know what's funny about this? So I was watching the Netflix, and they had the battle for the NBA was trying to win the gold medal for America again. Have you guys? I can't remember. It was like the trip to the
Olympics. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was it was the whole Olympics thing. Yeah. And it was fascinating because, everybody in NBA is woke, super woke. Like, everybody is. LeBron, all of them.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating because you have these guys who all of a sudden, all that wokeness kind of went all the way out.
Yeah.
Oh, as soon as you go to the Olympics,
because they're competing with other black teams who are French.
So yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it was so encouraging and fascinating because all of a sudden these guys became nationalists.
Yeah,
all of them did, and they were like, "Yo, they're not like us." I was like, "Oh,
I don't care how black they are.
Tell me more." I'm interested.
They're like, they're not like us.
Yeah, exactly. Now, this is America, and all of a sudden, Kevin Garnett had more in common with Pastor Toby than he did with another black player in France.
Right.
And it was like, now see, that's what I remember. I remember that reality, but it took that kind of battle for the ring before they were able to make those distinctions well again.
Yeah. Well, in both those examples of World War II and that one, it is interesting that part of the way that, like, nations are forged is through conflict with other nations. Whether wicked conflict or terrible conflict like wars or Olympic competitions, where it's like, that you actually, like the us them thing And it can, and then the
loyalty's built because you're playing.
This
for
is why
your
sports is,
country
and people love,
also-
like, this is why sports is actually a valuable thing, because it's a way for those competitive and tribal instincts to be exercised in a way that's not destructive and violent,
but builds up.
Unless you're in Philadelphia.
And it was encouraging to see as well on the other side of this, people who had migrated to America and become American citizens now playing on America's team. Against the other
America's
team.
exactly.
They're Americans now. That's how they have, and it was really weird. It's like, man.
I got one last question.
Go ahead.
And we get so what are this is a tea leaf question. What do you see Trump happening? It's amazing you think about Trump's administration right now. It feels like it's 2 years in, but it's like 4 months in.
100 days.
He's doing a lot.
Like, what do you think like these next 4 years look like with Trump? And then do you think JD wins?
I think so. I think the big question will be like, he's making these moves. How much do they actually pay off? Like some of, like, especially the economic ones, because
tariffs,
it still is the economy, and so like midterms will matter. Will be if he's able to do some successful things and they hold the House and Senate and everything else, then I think like, oh, that's a good sign. If all of a sudden either events overtake, which they always can, like things happen, or some of the things are duds. And all of a sudden there's a backlash, then I think it's a toss up in terms of, but so far, at least the Democrats have seemed singularly uninterested in figuring out what went wrong.
That's what I was going to say.
They're doubling down on
they're going to double, like they're taking, so when everybody talks about the 80-20 issues and they, instead of going like, hey, we should get off of those 20, when we're the 20, we should like not do that. They're doubling down on it. And so I think that's the bigger concern I have with Trump is like, how does he try to like when folks like us decide like, oh no, we want to push farther. I don't know if you knew, like we weren't just like we make America great again. Like we're like, yeah, but like part of its greatness is its goodness, and part of its goodness is its gospelness. And so we need to get some Christian nationalism up in here. And like, oh, Obergefell has to go, and all of these kind of things. How much resistance, like, does that splinter the Republicans bad? Because in the present moment, there's this kind of like momentum where we're like, hey, on these issues, we're all good. But then all of a sudden, say you win those battles, and then everybody's like, okay, so now Obergefell, right? Like we need to end that. And then there's a big like no. That's the thing that I would be concerned about. But that's like, no, that's up to God. Like I just go, should still do it.
So what about the Pope?
Yeah.
Pope Bob.
So Pope Bob, I saw somebody say like, because apparently his brother's like a MAGA guy, and his brother's like going on, and his brother's like the one who's going on,
interviewed
and
a
he's
couple
going
times
on the shows, and he's like, yeah, we were at the White Sox in 2005 when they, like, and he's talking about, he's like, MAGA does memes and stuff like that. And I just think it's funny. I'm like, oh, maybe they got the wrong brother. Like maybe the Holy Spirit was like, get a Prevost, and they was like, anyone, or just like which one? And they picked the cardinal rather than this guy,
the wrong one.
But it is like, I was joking, like it is like, you remember the movie King Ralph, John Goodman? It's like this movie, like it's like 90s comedy where like the entire royal family dies in a freak accident in Britain, and like the last descendant is this guy from like the Midwest or New Jersey or someplace like that. This American dude who comes over, and it's King Ralph, right? And he has to like learn to be all royal. And I'm like, it kind of feels like this could be Pope Ralph. And you kind of just want to see what does he end up bringing a little bit of that American Midwestern the most normal guy to do it. So.
I was looking it up with my civic students, technically speaking, any Roman Catholic male can be elected Pope.
Yes.
Technically.
Yes.
You don't, although I think since like the 1200s or 1300s,
it's always been a cardinal.
It's always been a cardinal. But before that, it was all kinds of monks, and I think that was when the College of Cardinals was formed. But so I mean, he had a chance.
He had a chance.
He had a chance.
This close.
This close.
This close.
So everyone needs to check out ChristKirkDC.com. ChristKirkDC.com. Pray for our work there in Washington, D.C. And pray for fruit. Pray for a church to get established.
If you live in that area, go to ChristKirkDC.com, sign up for updates, because one of the things we need to know is like how many people we actually talk in. We have a space to meet. It is just east of the Capitol that we've secured, but it's not a big space. And so if all of a sudden people come out of the woodwork, we're going to have to start getting creative.
I like it.
Share the link. You probably,
you got friends in DC.
Our audience has friends in DC, Northern Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, in that area. And if you know people that are looking for a church, a CREC church.
Is it July 13th? Is the
July
first?
13th.
And then Toby will be there pastoring or preaching in September 21st.
I signed up for
and then,
Toby in the fall. I'll be in October.
Jared Longshore.
Jared's in July.
Okay.
Jared and Ben Merkel kicking it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
And don't forget, sign up for Fight Laugh Feast. School Wars. We're in Nashville again this year. Go to fightlaughfeast.com. We want you to join us so that we can rebuild Christendom with our kids.
Dun,
MAGA.
dun, dun. Oh, sorry.
We can't afford this. So if you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic.
Today we are going to be talking about the Kyle Rittenhouse Always Ready bundle available at armoredrepublic.com. It's a very practical kit, including everything that you need all the way from hydration to first aid to general purpose to magazine holders and to a very comfortable plate carrier. So included is the Testudo Gen 3 plate carrier, and we also have 2 C3 plates that I've included in the bundle. So these plates are multi-curve, multi-hit ceramic, so they can take multiple rounds. I really like these plates because it's going to offer level 4 protection. Thank you guys for watching. Again, you can go to armoredrepublic.com, linked below, and you can purchase your Kyle Rittenhouse Always Ready bundle today.